Well, we are in an interesting place today. We're in Sequim, Washington, on the north shore of the Olympic Peninsula. And it's a lousy flying day outside, so we decided to do this inside. But I am going to be interviewing an interesting group of people. We've got a real spectrum of experience in the F-100, from the old days, the middle days, and the younger days. We've got three guys here that are somewhat icons in this business. One of them is James Ellis, who flew the 100 in the early days, Rod Hofman, who flew it in the middle days, and Ted Shanks, who flew it in the guard days. But they're all good guys with a lot of experience. Jim, let me start off with you. How in the world where'd you grow up, and how in the world did you get into flying?
I was born and raised in Alabama, and the Army was going to draft me in 1951, and instead I joined the Air Force. And I applied for aviation cadets in 1953 and was accepted. I graduated from class 54 Kilo in June of 54. And I was in the 100 for about 14 years, ended with 3,000 hours in the airplane, and retired from the Air Force in October 1972.
So 3,000 hours in the airplane, you probably could still start it.
Say again?
You probably could still start the airplane after 3,000 hours.
I think I could.
Yes. And Rod, how about you? Where'd you grow up and how'd you get into aviation?
Well, I grew up, at least from the 4th grade on, in Ferndale, Washington, north of Bellingham. I was born in North Bellingham, Washington. And I went to college one year and decided I didn't know what I was doing there, so I thought I'd join the Air Force. And my stepbrother told me about aviation cadets. So I went through aviation cadet training as a navigator because they were short on navigators and had a high school graduation. If you could pass the exams, you could go in. I didn't have 2 years to go to pilot training. So I ended up as a navigation instructor at Mather for 3 years and then got a pilot training assignment and went through Martin Marietta contract-based civilian instructors for primary and Webb for basic, and then to Luke for F-100s. And
very good. Well, we're going to hear about your career later. And Ted, you had a little different route to this.
Certainly did. I was born in North Bend, Oregon, but I grew up in West Africa because my parents were missionaries.
Mm.
And in college I was not doing so well, so I decided instead of getting drafted I'd check out the Air Force part, and got in the Air National Guard as a enlisted dental lab technician. And then I discovered that flying was interesting, but they only had navigator slots, so I went to aviation cadets because I didn't have much college. And aviation cadets as a navigator, and then RO school, radar intercept officer school, and then 2 years later I got into pilot training at 67C.
Very good. So your first airplane was what?
F-89.
F-89, all right. We will learn about that aircraft in a bit. Jim, if you were in the 100 back in those days, you must have been in the early F-100s.
I checked out in the F-100C in April of 54.
Okay. Now, where were you stationed?
I was stationed at George Air Force Base, Clark Air Base, Luke Air Force Base, Fan Rang, South Vietnam, and my last tour was my worst job in the world, 12th Air Force, Austin, Texas.
Yeah, everybody's love is a headquarters assignment. So look, the old days in the F-100, it was the first of the swept-wing jets, you know, that was supersonic, and so it had some bad reputation. How did you find it to fly? Was it dangerous? Was it interesting? What?
I didn't consider it was dangerous. You had to be, you had to learn about adverse yaw to start with. It's strange to fly an airplane that if you're subsonic, you can't use aileron much. You got to use rudder. Yeah. And I was fortunate to be able to attend the fighter weapons school at Ellis in 1961, and they taught us to fly the airplane at 90 knots.
Wow.
That's hard to believe. You're sinking about 2,000 feet a minute, but if you ever use aileron, you're dead.
Yeah.
You can't use aileron. You can turn it with rudder, but I enjoyed the airplane. It is a good airplane. I flew the A, the C, the D, and the F, and I also flew a supersonic. Excuse me. I also flew a secret F-100 in the mid '60s. North American made about 18 or 20 F-100A models for the Taiwanese Air Force, for most of them. They shipped the airplanes over on a carrier, offloaded at Subic Bay, and I was fortunate to ferry one of the airplanes up to Chiayi, Taiwan, for the Chinese. It was the airframe of the F-100A model, but the engine and everything else was completely different. For an example, cruising at 30,000 up to Taiwan, the airplane was in the tuck, Mach 9.2 at 85% RPM with tanks on. I couldn't believe it.
Wow, nobody could believe it.
I'm sure the airplane would have gone supersonic in mill power, a straight and level, a clean configuration. I love the airplane. I'd do it all over again if I could.
We're going to give you the chance, no problem. So, okay. So, tell me again where you went to pilot training.
I went to pilot training at, what did I say? Martin Marietta contract base down at southern
Moore
Texas.
Yeah, okay. Moore Air Base.
Yeah, Moore Air Base, yeah.
Okay, so when you got out of there, how did you get in the F-100?
Well, first I went through Big Springs, T-33, and then over to Glendale for the F-100, and then up to for advanced gunnery and refueling. We went to Ellis,
Okay, yeah.
and from there I went to Clovis, New Mexico, Canada. Air Force Base.
Garden spot of the Midwest.
Yeah. From there I went to Ramstein, Germany.
Oh, you poor devil.
And and from there I went to the University of Omaha for 2 semesters, and then down to Alexandria, Louisiana, the England Air Force Base, and from there to Van Rang.
Okay.
And
So were you in the 417th at
Yes.
Ramstein? Okay, and then Alex, and then to Vietnam. What base did you go to in Vietnam?
Van Rang,
Okay.
same as you. But were you there?
I was there from March '68 to January of '69.
All right, we're going to let you guys tell your war stories here. Right? Ted, so you flew an old airplane, the F-89, up in Portland?
At Portland, Portland Guard Base.
Portland Guard Base.
Yeah.
And what did you guys do? Defend the skies of the Northwest?
We certainly did.
Yeah,
And
not
we
one
were doing-
Japanese airplane got through your
one.
front line. That's good. That's good. So what after the F-89 then?
Well, after the F-89, and by the time I got into the pilot training part of it, front seat F-89 in Des Moines, and then we changed from air to air to air to mud, and we got the F-84F, which was kind of like a step backwards. But that was a really different regime for us because we had never done any air to ground at all. And of course, nobody could get any kind of a Williams or Luke or anything like that. So it was all local checkout.
Local checkout in the F-100 or the F-84.
F-84. So your first flight was solo.
Yeah.
And with a very nervous chase.
Yep.
But we survived. But the F1, and then we changed to the F-100 in 1970. And the F-100 was a step up. It was not an antique airplane. It was a good shooter. The 84 was squirrely, especially on strafe.
Yeah.
But the 100 was easy to shoot.
So the local checkout in the 100 was. Did you feel competent after how many rides?
Oh, two. Two is, it was
You're
fun.
a real man.
Well, from the 84.
Yeah.
And of course we had the F model too.
Yeah.
And so you could take an IP with you, and he could give you a lot of good pointers.
Did you have a lot of trouble going from the air to air in the 89 to the 84 air to ground? Was it a big transition? Or?
Yeah, it was moderately scary. Yes. A guy would take the IP would take you to the low level, and then he'd say, "Follow me. We're going to do a target of opportunity. Oh, there's a railroad," and he'd roll in, and he says, "Follow me," and I'd follow him, and I'd be standing on the rudder pedals, and he's just doing a normal 45-degree bomb, and I'm back there scared as hell.
Back in the days when you could get away with stuff like that.
Yes.
Jim, talk to me about your combat experience in Vietnam. What was it like, and what'd you do?
I thought the flying there was great. I didn't. Every time you took off, you were loaded with bombs, rockets, napalm and stuff.
CBUs.
I liked it. I enjoyed it.
Close air support for the most part?
So
Close air support of troops, ground troops?
every mission,
Every
yeah,
mission.
right.
Okay. And you operated off alert? You operated off alert?
Oh yes, yes.
Yeah, so I forgot to ask you too, did you set nuclear alert back in the F-100 days?
Yes, I did.
From where?
Our at Clark, I was alert pad was on Tydad Formosa.
Okay, yeah.
Yes,
Because you couldn't sit them in Japan at all at that time, right?
I was never stationed in Japan.
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah, got that. But I mean, I think the people in Japan had to deploy to Taiwan or Formosa or Korea.
They went to
Korea.
yes,
Yeah, there we go.
yes.
And Rod, so your experience in the war over there, you must have set nuke alert in the 100.
I what?
You must have set nuclear alert in the 100.
In Incirlik, Turkey.
Incirlik, Turkey, from
Yeah.
Ramstein.
No, from Clovis, New Mexico.
From Clovis. Okay, you were in the deployment days, the old days,
We went
the
non-
rote days.
We went nonstop from Clovis, New Mexico, all the way to Wethersfield, England.
What kind of tankers? Were they
KB-50.
KB-50 straight boom? You guys were real men, all of you.
No, no, we had the arched boom up. You
Did
could
you?
see the boom, but
Okay.
I still had this big floppy basket though that if you moved a little bit, that thing would.
And how about your days in Vietnam? How'd you find them, and what'd you do?
Well, it was interesting. It was fun flying. Yeah, Tactical Air Command is all supported the Army. We didn't have to worry about North Korean airplanes because they didn't come up past the line. So,
Yeah.
so all we had to worry about was a few quad mountain 50 caliber machine guns they moved around, which would get somebody every once in a while.
Mainly supporting the ground troops for the most part? Close air support?
Yeah, well, the forward air controllers would mark a target with your smoke, and you'd come in and hit my smoke or do this or that. And most of the time there's spots in the jungle, you don't know if there's anything there or not, to be truthful.
Okay. So, Ted, what was the Guard like in the old days?
Guard was a good family. One of the big advantages of a Guard operation is that you don't have the crew chiefs moving from base to base and from one school to the other. So when you have an airplane like this one here, 775, that was Master Sergeant Jimmy Miller, and that was my airplane, and he and I took care of that airplane for 10 years. So he knew all the quirks, and if the maintenance control said, well, what's the matter with that part of that particular part? It's always failing. He would tell them exactly why it had a history of that, and he knew there was good corporate memory in the Guard for their maintenance because they always had the same guy at the same airplane.
Jim, what did you do after you got out of the Air Force, after you finished with the Air Force?
I returned to Alabama. I bass fished, quail hunted, and hustle pool. That's all I did.
A terrible life, but somebody has to do it, right? Rod, how about you?
Well, I got out of the Air Force when I had a chance, and I went with United Airlines for the next 20-some years.
Good. Yeah, so you're flying free around America as a retiree.
Yeah.
There you go. And Ted, how about you? How'd you end your career?
Well, I ended the reserve in '92 as an 06, but in the meantime, I had been flying for United at the same time I was in the Guard. So I flew until 2000 with United Airlines.
Well, you guys are a real piece of Air Force history from left to right here. I mean, you guys are around in the early days of the jet age, and then you finished up before the more modern airplanes come in. So as you look back, Jim, as you look back on the old Air Force, you look at the new Air Force, what kind of message do you have for the young kids?
I really don't have a message. The only message I would have for the young people, I wouldn't recommend a military life.
It's a tough life, not for everybody, for sure.
Yes.
The country's for everybody, but not necessarily a full-time career.
Yes.
So, understand indeed. How about you, Rod?
Well, I enjoyed it, and I think my wife enjoyed it, but you have to have a wife who is kind of independent and can take care of herself, because you're gone a lot of the time.
Yeah.
And the ones who didn't like being alone went home to mother or something. Every time we deployed somewhere, even if it was for a month, the runway was closed or something. So,
Ted, how about the old guard and the new guard?
Old Guard was fun. You had to kind of manage your own career, but the new Guard is challenging. My son's in the Air Force. In fact, he's been in C-17s and is down at Scott right now. Just got promoted to LC. But the deal is, there are two facets. You have to be a hard worker, and you have to be lucky and get a good boss.
yeah.
And if you can manage those two things, and some of it's pure luck, you're in good shape.
Well, I think you guys would have all been good bosses, but I tell you, we all know that the Air Force today is capable of things that we weren't capable of in the old days. They can find targets day and night in any kind of weather. They can hit them. Yeah. Unfortunately, we couldn't do that because we didn't have the right stuff, but we had the right people, people like you. So thanks very much for what you did for the Air Force. Thanks for being members of the Super Sabre Society. We appreciate that, and we hope to see you at the convention in Vegas next year. Thank you all very much for coming.
You're welcome.